Mena-Watch, der unabhängige Nahost-Think Tank.
Welcome to Mena-Talk. My name is Jasmin Arémi. I'm a journalist at Mena-Watch, and joining me is geopolitical analyst Paushali Lass. In today's episode, we will be talking about some high-level delegation visits to Israel, as well as the launch of India x Israel Nexus. Welcome, Paushali. Nice that you're here again.
Thank you very much for having me again.
You've just returned from some high-level delegation visits to Israel, and can you tell us about the purpose of the trips and what stood out to you the most?
Right. So I was in Israel actually in May as part of the Israel-India Friendship Club delegation. We launched a very exciting initiative called India-Israel Nexus. In May, the delegation was really, we got influential people from India and the Indian diaspora that is based in the UK to Israel and letting them see the reality of Israel. We had several important meetings with, among which, for example, Minister of Diaspora Affairs, Amichai Shikli, and we also met member of Knesset, Ohad Tal at the Knesset. We went along the Gaza border towns. We met several interesting people. We went to meet with a very interesting organization called Magen 48 that is equipping civilians along the Gaza border area to make sure that another October 7th does not happen again.
Your last visit was just last week, I guess?
Yeah, I just returned just a couple of days ago. Yeah, and so I was there for a few reasons. One of them was I attended the JNS International Policy Summit, which was great because we had speakers like the Prime Minister of Israel himself, to the President of Israel, to the Speaker of the Knesset, Amir Ohana, and as well as a lot of like influential policy people like Hillel Neuer, who leads the organization UN Watch. We had Rawan Osman. So it was a privilege for me to be there. And most importantly, I was the only Indian and also, as far as I got to know, only German there. So,
All right.
yeah, so we heard a lot about like what are Israel's next steps, with Iran, with Lebanon. Of course, those were the highlights, but we also spoke about Judea Samaria and the international vilification or demonization of Israel, in the media and what to do about it. So we had several important discussions there. And then I also had meetings with the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and we had the official launch of our India Israel Nexus, which is like a platform to connect businesses in the India Israel space. So we provide a platform to connect businesses and people from the societies of the two countries together. So we had the launch event with inspiring speakers. We had Nur Hassan Nahum, who is the Israel Special Envoy for Trade and Innovation. We had Anat Bernstein Reich, who's actually a very influential woman, like the chairwoman of BDO Investments. She's the president of the Israel India Chamber of Commerce, Israel Asia Chamber of Commerce. And then we also had Kobi Shoshani, who's the former Consul General of Israel to Midwest India. So he's an Israeli diplomat. Then we also had a panel with interesting speakers. So we had a great launch event.
Yeah, sounds like you've met a lot of interesting people there. And was there one moment during the last 2 stays that stayed with you the most?
Well, of course, I think several moments stayed, but one of the things is, I think at the JNS Policy Summit, how the message was very unified. Of course, there were different speakers and different thoughts and ideas brought into the room. But I would say the overall message was really like Israel is a sovereign nation and Israel will not allow its security to be threatened. So whoever threatens Israeli security will have to face consequences. So that was the message. And like, we are here, we are going nowhere. So deal with it.
You visited also institutions, like you said, like Israel's foreign ministry. What surprised you the most compared with how Israel is often portrayed also in Germany or abroad in general at the moment?
Well, I was invited to the foreign ministry by an Israeli diplomat who has served as a diplomat in India, for example, for many years. I also met with the former ambassador of Israel to India, who's the head of public diplomacy directorate now for the state of Israel. And I also met several of their colleagues. What really stood out to me is the way they treated me with such a warm welcome. Like I'm used to, growing up, I come from a generation where you think of diplomats and politicians and you immediately think like, wow, these are people like who are up there and there we are, we can't them. But I immediately felt like at home the way they treated me. There was a genuine interest of knowing who I am as a person. Now, how many ministers or diplomats around the world in any country would actually do that, take the time to know a person, just chatting in the cafeteria, having lunch, having laughs together. It was all such a personal moment, this, personal people to people connection, which is so unique, I feel, in Israel. So whether it is at the top level to somebody you meet on the street, I think the Israeli people are just so warm.
The topics we are talking about is a little bit related to India and Jewish people. Like you were discovering some deeper historical ties between India and Jewish people. And I would like to go a little bit deeper into that topic with you. Could you tell the audience a little bit about it? Maybe also pick up what surprised you the most about the shared history of both countries and about the Jewish people connecting between India and Israel.
I think one thing is very important right at the outset to mention that the Jews came to India in different phases. So there was the most ancient one, I guess, the Jews who arrived and settled in Cochin, which is in the south of India. So this move to India happened in different stages from Judea. So the first ones came the destruction of the first temple period, which is like about 2,500 years ago. And then there was another wave of Jews moving to India around 2,000 years ago at the destruction of the second temple. And then there was also the last majority or last bigger population of Jews that moved to India was called the Baghdadi Jews, basically who came from not just Baghdad in Iraq, but in the Middle East, like from Aleppo in Syria, from Baghdad, Iraq, from all over Iraq, from Iran, Afghanistan, Yemen. So they all settled in the coastal cities of India, mainly in Mumbai in West India and Kolkata in East India, which also happens to be my birthplace. And they contributed a lot to the Indian economy, to the welfare of India. So the main ones are Kochini and the Bene Israel Jews, and then the Baghdadi Jews. But then you also have another set of Jews who are called the Bene Ephraim, who are also in southeast part of India, and then the Bene Menashe, who are also gaining in popularity because the world wants to know more and more about them, and the government of Israel has actually promised to get all the Bene Israel back from India, or in the northeast part of India, to Israel because they say that they are the lost tribes of Israel. So I'm more involved with the Bene Israel and the Baghdadi Jews of India. I've written a book on that called Tasting Faith, which is sharing the story of the Jews of India together with Anne Sampson, who's an 83-year-old Jewish Indian Jewish woman who lives in Toronto, shared her experiences of being an Indian Jew living in North America and the kind of like the prejudices that she faced. But an important thing coming out of the story of the Jews of India is very important for people to understand is that Israel or Zionism is not just this political Zionism which happened from like the 19th century, or you hear about like, okay, the Jews lived in Europe and they were kicked out, and because of the Holocaust, then they came to Israel, and that's it, as if the Jews never existed before that. Whereas the Jews of India have prayed looking at in the direction of Jerusalem for thousands of years, and that is the Zionism that also people need to know about, because Zionism, actually, Zion comes from the word in the Bible already, Zion, the hills around Jerusalem, so that is Zionism, or Zion comes from the Bible, which is over 3,000 years old. Jerusalem, or the land of Israel, is in the festivals and in the prayers of the Jewish people, including the Jews of India. So when the Jews of India, most of them have made Aliyah, when they hear the narratives in the media like, or Israel is a European colonial secular project, these people, they're like, how can we be European colonizers, so I think this message really needs to be shared more and more with the world, that there have been Jews living in four corners of the world, and now they are coming back because the state of Israel now exists, which can protect them and give them a good life in Israel.
Knowing this as the background for our next topic, you co-founded India X Israel Nexus. This was the last delegation trip as well. What inspired you to create it, and what is it about?
Myself, together with my co-founders, Justin DeMello, he leads a manpower agency that gets Indian workers to Israel. And my other co-founder is Revital Moses, who's an Indian Jewish person living in Israel. So she's Indian Israeli, and she's become a very popular YouTube star and social media content creator. But not just that, she works in the tech industry in Israel as well, and she has her own podcast. So she is kind of, in my mind, like an official, cultural ambassador of Israel India relations. She does fantastic work. So we came together and we decided to build this platform because we see that there is a lot of connections between the two countries, but a lot of people who are interested in knowing and understanding each other. We wanted to provide a platform where there can be more like strengthening of the people to people relations. There are strong government deals happening and a lot of defense partnerships, agriculture, R&D, innovation, but somehow people don't know much about it, so we want to provide a platform in getting people together so they discuss not just how to make business deals, but also learn about one another and one another's countries, cultures, because we believe that defense and drip irrigation, for which Israel is known for, and helping India with also, as well as like cybersecurity and all that, can help the country very much. But it's the culture and people to people relations that really take the relationship forward to another level.
You've said that on your very first day in Israel, on the last trip you were taking to the Gaza border and the Palestinian territories. Can you tell us what happened there, what experience you had there, and how it influenced also your perspective?
To cut a long story short, on my very first day, yes, I was kidnapped by a taxi driver who had an Israeli number plate from East Jerusalem into the Palestinian territories, so Area A of the Palestinian territories in Judea Samaria, which is known as the West Bank. And Area A, there is a clear red sign called Israeli citizens are forbidden to enter because it's dangerous for their lives, I was taken there, and well, it's a miracle that nothing happened to me physically, but besides all my money taken and a lot of harassment and unpleasant behavior, but I managed to come out alive. But I also got to know and understand the mentality. It gave me a whole new perspective to understand Palestinians are not oppressed by Israel. There's a lot of free land in Palestine. Nobody lives in concentration camps. And there is this sentiment of they want to come into Israel to work in order to kill Jews.
You also met some Israeli reservists and families and talked to them, questioning the narratives of the Western media about Israel. What did those conversations teach you also about the Israeli society?
Israeli reservists, I haven't just met them, but they happen to be very good friends of mine. And so when one of my closest friends, Yair, so he's currently in the reserves again. And whenever he's in the reserve, so I also visit the army base. So I've had the opportunity and the privilege to visit IDF bases and yeah, seen them up close, what they do and how they are. And the reservist families are superheroes. How they manage the families, not knowing what will happen to their husbands, but they are like fully on board because they know that their husbands are out there defending. So you must understand that these reservists are regular people, right? They are regular people who have businesses, work, so they leave all that and go and serve in the army, protecting the people, and because they have no choice. And just to give you a small example, so my friend, when he was in the reserves last time, he and his friends, who all I know all of them, and they were at a checkpoint, and somebody with a came from the Arab village nearby, so Palestinian, um, came with his car, and then they all immediately, the soldiers immediately, you have to be alarmed, because there have been several terrorist attacks, of course. So this guy actually gets out and he asks in English, and so my friend who can speak good English talked to him. So then this guy said, okay, I was in the US, and actually I just want to talk to you because my mother recently died and I have no one to talk to in the village. And the IDF guys are like, well, what's going on with you? Okay, talk to us. So this guy keeps sharing how his mother was such a wonderful woman, and in his village, like people want him to become a martyr or whatever. And my friend said, you're saying how good a Muslim and a woman your mother was. Please follow her path. Please don't listen to all the bad things that you hear. So leave all those bad ways aside. Your mother was a good Muslim. Your mother was a good person. Follow her. So that will keep the memory of your mother alive. And so the guy was like, yeah, you guys are so nice. I just really thought like I could share with you guys. That's how they are. They get a call from an Arab family from a Palestinian village which wants to bring their kid into Israel for medical treatment. They get medical treatment. The IDF goes and drives them and provides them with medical care. I mean, this is what the IDF does, and they have such strict rules, such incredibly strict rules of shooting. So if you see any civilian, you cannot shoot, and that's one of the reasons why Gaza is the way it is, because Hamas, those people don't care about lives. They will put there. So the moment the IDF soldiers enter, because they've seen that a terrorist that they want to get rid of is there, that terrorist will place his entire family in front and disappear from the back. So what happens? Same thing in the West Bank, in Judea Samaria. So what happens is that the IDF soldier is then face to face with the women and children in the house. So what happens is that the terrorist disappears, leaving his family there. This is the kind of fight that the IDF is fighting, that Israel is fighting. And for the world to demonize these people is what really is such a shocking thing.
Also, speaking of this kind of narratives we all hear and see here in the Western media, you have also spoken a little bit about the rise of anti-Semitism in Germany. How concerned are you about the current situation? Because we don't just have the rising anti-Semitism, it's like the main form is anti-Zionism, and Israelis are also not safe anymore in Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's not talk about even Spain and Ireland and all, where it's like open calls for the destruction of Israel. Germany as a country, I mean, I have to say, I'm very proud of our police, and even the city I live in Dusseldorf, our mayor, our government is fantastic, in protecting Jewish life. And having said that, quite shocking once you know the statistics, what happens in Germany. So, like in 2025 alone, about 9,000 anti Semitic incidents, almost 9,000 incidents reported. Many are not even reported, right? So, it must be way over 9,000 incidents. There is about something like 258% rise in anti Semitism from 2022, so largely due to the October 7th war, and which brings us to really the question like anti-Zionism is really the new anti-Semitism, which obviously is even more scary because it leaves the non-Jews also vulnerable, right? Like there are so many non-Jews who are standing up for Israel because they see the truth. It's really at this stage it's a fight between truth and lie and light and darkness. One of the most important things is that if good people don't speak up, how are we going to keep this thing in check? Because we have laws, we have police protection, yet one mustn't forget that we are a very proud democracy as well. So, in a democracy, under the name of free speech and free, what do you call, freie Sammlung, like you can do anything almost. And this has really, I believe, crossed all red lines at the moment. What's going on? I mean, just when was it? Yesterday or day before in Göttingen at the university, destroy Israel, kill IDF. What nonsense is this? And how is this even allowed? How is this even related to an university environment? I think much stricter action is needed, and wherever we can do whatever we can do, we cannot let this hate speech run wild simply because we live in a democracy, because it's dangerous to people's lives. When I talk to people, just regular people in my friends and acquaintances circle, they're always shocked when I tell them the statistics. When I present them with statistics, they're like, wow, no, that can't be really. No, this just can't be. We cannot let that happen. But then they go about their lives. They just don't think that there is anything majorly happening because they are not facing problems. They're not like it's not affecting them physically or their families. Once they have their windows smashed, or um, once they even get like verbal or any kind of physical harassment, maybe then they will begin to understand what the Jewish people are going through in this country. How have we come to this point that one group of people have to hide their identity?
I think the work on your social media platforms is important because you are pointing out a lot of positive things about Israel and help also to understand another side of Israel, which is not that present in the media. During your last visit, you also learned about an organization like Save a Child's Heart, for example. Do you think that Israel's humanitarian efforts receive enough international attention? Because I also talked to like Aya, which was also in an interview here, about a lot of good stuff happening and like charity work. But I think like nothing of this is happening to be displayed here. Or
I don't know whether Israel is bad at PR or that the brains are way too washed in the outside of Israel that they don't even want to know what is good about Israel. It's a combination of both. And since you mentioned Eyal Dror, who actually led this Operation Good Neighbor, which is IDF's biggest humanitarian operation to this date, saving hundreds of thousands of Syrian civilians during the Syrian civil war. Hardly anybody knows. I mean, we've written about it. Eyal has even published a book about it, but I don't know. People read, some people may read, it goes away because the mainstream media does not pick up on it. The mainstream media does not put it up on billboards and signs and constant on repeat like it does with the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. It's difficult for people to associate Israel with all the positive things. Look, even Israel is one of the first countries to send a relief effort team to Venezuela after the earthquake. I myself have been to Turkey in early 2023 through an Israeli organization, which was again one of the first responders after the massive earthquake in Turkey. Either people don't want to hear, but I think it's because these messages are never reinforced in the media. So we do what we can do. I really want to focus on all the good work that Israel is doing, like Save a Child's Heart, It's an amazing organization. If our viewers can go to their website, saveachildsheart.org, and see the amazing stuff that they do in providing life-saving surgeries to children from countries that cannot afford such surgeries, and even countries like Afghanistan or Syria or Iraq, with which Israel does not have any diplomatic relations with. Even before October 2023, of course, Gazans were coming regularly to Save a Child's Heart, and the doctors and the staff openly say a child is a child. When they are on the operating theater with their hearts open, they don't see which country they come from. It's a child whose life they have to save. Now, tell me something. How can these people be accused of being baby killers and child killers from around the world and get non-stop verbal harassment? The same people who actually save lives. This is a point I want to be very, very clear, made very clear in international media and everywhere. So I want to also, besides Save a Child's Heart, I also want to show the innovation that Israeli companies, Israeli people are doing to make the world a better place, because they believe in not just benefiting themselves. They've literally made the desert bloom, but also help in other countries. The Israeli help is known in Indian villages, like, in bringing agricultural technology, in bringing technology in classrooms and all of that.
Maybe this is also the biggest difference between Israel solidarity and the so-called pro-Palestinian solidarity, because the Israel solidarity happened to seem so much more constructive, changing the world for the better and not spreading hate and false narratives. Maybe people should also reflect on that. Finally, if there is now one misconception about Israel that you would like the viewers to question after watching this interview today, what would it be?
There are so many, but I think just the very fact that people who, from their value system, from their education and value system, people who value life, they will go to the ends of the world to save one life, one kidnapped life, and who will get children from enemy nations into their country to save them. How can such a group willingly kill children in Gaza or anywhere? Just this very fact, just think about it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Mena-Talk, and thank you, Paushali Lass, for your time again. If you found this conversation useful, don't forget to subscribe on our YouTube channel, activate the bell, and follow us on social media. Until next time, my name is Jasmin Arémi. Thank you. Thank you.
Mena-Watch, der unabhängige Nahost-Think Tank. Besuchen Sie auch unsere Website. Dort finden Sie täglich neue aktuelle Berichte und ausführliche wissenschaftlich fundierte Hintergrundanalysen zur Geschichte und Gegenwart der MENA-Region.